a manhunt was launched to apprehend an active shooter who had just fatally shot Joshua Niles, a 28-year-old individual. A vigilant neighbor witnessed the entire incident and promptly alerted the police, providing a description of the suspect wearing a black hoodie. Meanwhile, as the shooter attempted to flee the scene, Amber Washburn, Josh's 24-year-old wife, arrived in the driveway with their 4-year-old child. Tragically, the assailant shot Amber inside the car, but thankfully, the child seated in the back remained unharmed. The sound of gunfire prompted a nearby deputy to swiftly respond to the scene. To his dismay, he discovered a lifeless male lying beneath a truck. Upon further observation, he noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Inside, he found a lifeless woman in the front seat and a terrified child clutching onto his McNuggets in the back. The child, although physically unharmed, was undoubtedly traumatized by the horrific ordeal. The question remained, who was this perpetrator? What motivated them to take the lives of two innocent individuals with promising futures? Most importantly, why subject an innocent child to such a harrowing experience? Joshua Niles, born in 1990, grew up in a large, tightly knit family, fostering a profound sense of love and dedication. As a devoted family man, he actively contributed to the well-being of his loved ones. During his teenage years, Joshua formed a deep connection with his high school sweetheart, Charlene "Charlie" Albert. Their relationship resulted in the birth of 2 children, Gabby, born in 2008 when Charlie was 16 and Joshua was 18, and Bentley, born 2 years later. Despite their young age, the couple successfully navigated the challenges of parenthood until their eventual separation in 2012. Following the separation, Charlene relocated to Texas with her parents, and a co-parenting custody arrangement was established. Joshua would have the children during the summer, while they resided with their mother during the school year. In 2012, a new chapter began in Joshua's life when he met and fell in love with 18-year-old Amber Washburn. Every summer, Gabby and Bentley would come to visit, and Amber would become an essential part of their lives. The love story between the couple continued to flourish, and in 2014, they welcomed their son, Joshua Jr. While Joshua worked as a landscapist, Amber pursued a career in an overnight bakery. Together, they shared dreams of building a stable future, including marriage, a successful business, and a happy family life. Despite the challenges of raising their 4-year-old son, Joshua Jr., who was on the autism spectrum, they remained devoted parents. However, their lives took a tragic turn when Joshua's past caught up with him, resulting in a devastating outcome for both him and Amber. The events unfolded on a fateful afternoon in Sodus, New York, on October 22, 2018. The peaceful atmosphere outside their home was abruptly shattered by the sound of gunfire. Multiple reports flooded the 911 dispatch, prompting a swift response from law enforcement. Coincidentally, a Wayne County deputy was nearby, serving an unrelated eviction notice. Upon hearing the reports, the deputy quickly made his way towards the chaotic scene. What he discovered was a lifeless man lying beneath a truck. As he surveyed the area, he noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Upon closer examination, he found a lifeless woman in the front seat and a terrified child clutching his McNuggets in the back. Acting swiftly, the deputy prioritized the safety of the child and entrusted him to a concerned neighbor. Once the child was secure, he called for backup and began processing the scene. The responding officers diligently collected evidence from the crime scene, including Amber's wallet, which was found on her lap and contained her driver's license identifying her as Amber Washburn. Deputies have identified the male victim found beneath the truck in the driveway as Joshua Niles. It has been confirmed by the police that Joshua and his partner lived in the residence where the shooting occurred. Now, when questioning the neighbors about the child, they have identified the child as Joshua and Amber's son, Joshua Jr. However, there is still a lingering question. Where is the shooter now? It is evident that there is an armed individual on the loose, as law enforcement responded promptly after the exchange of gunfire. The police are actively trying to identify and apprehend the shooter, suspecting that they may still be within the community. Authorities have issued a warning to residents in the surrounding area, advising them to remain in their homes until the situation is under control. Due to the numerous potential hiding spots, a perimeter has been established. The primary witness in this case is Tiffany Thayer, the neighbor who lives next door to Joshua and Amber. Her kitchen window overlooks their driveway, providing her with a clear view of the events. Tiffany reported seeing Joshua engaged in a conversation with an unknown male, who eventually led him towards the truck. Initially, the conversation appeared casual, but it quickly escalated into a horrifying scene as the stranger pointed a gun at Joshua and fired. When Amber arrived home in her car, her driver's side window was open. Upon witnessing the situation, she attempted to reverse and escape, but the shooter turned and fatally shot her in the head. Once the shooter confirmed Amber's demise, they turned their attention back to Joshua. Despite his efforts to seek refuge under the truck, he was unable to evade the multiple shots fired at him. Understanding the motive and identifying the perpetrator behind these double homicides is proving to be a challenge. The manner in which Amber was killed suggests that the assailant possesses some level of experience with handguns, as it was a difficult shot to execute. The detective's initial impression is that this incident bears many characteristics of an assassination. Detectives discovered additional neighbors who had caught a glimpse of the perpetrator before he fled, and based on their accounts, they were able to compile a description of the suspect. According to these witnesses, the culprit was a slender Caucasian male wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. Some neighbors even provided further details, mentioning that he had darker hair, a beard, and wore glasses. Initially, the officers initiated a manhunt with the assistance of canine trackers who attempted to track down the shooter by scent. One of the neighbors also provided valuable information regarding the shooter's last known direction of travel, which led towards the rear of the house and over a fence. The canine tracker was alerted to a piece of black cloth, later identified as a ski mask or balaclava, which became a crucial piece of evidence in identifying the shooter. The investigation continued as they followed the trail through the neighborhood. Eventually, the police reluctantly accepted the fact that the shooter had managed to escape the perimeter. Meanwhile, homicide detectives focused on speaking with Joshua and Amber's son in order to gain a better understanding of the events. Unfortunately, due to being on the autism spectrum and nonverbal, the child was unable to provide any information during the initial investigation. At the crime scene, the forensic unit meticulously processed the driveway where the shooting occurred. Their examination revealed that Joshua had been shot a total of 10 times. All the shell casings recovered were from the same firearm, consistent with the witness statement provided by Tiffany Thayer. This confirmed that there was only one shooter involved. The detectives only recovered 9 mm shell casings, which they hoped would help in matching the gun if a suspected weapon was found. It was evident that Amber had also been killed with the same gun. The police were certain that this was not a random act of violence and had been meticulously planned. While the bodies were being transported to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy, the detectives reached out to the families of Josh and Amber to deliver the unfortunate news. During their initial conversations with the families, the police inquired about any potential threats or grudges against the couple. Was there anyone who harbored hatred towards them? Joshua's family assured the police that it was highly unlikely for anyone to hold a grudge against him, as he was a kind and beloved individual. Amber's parents echoed the same sentiment about their daughter. However, as the police delved into Joshua's past, they discovered a recurring name, Charlene Childers, Joshua's ex-girlfriend. According to the family, their relationship had been tumultuous. Despite having 2 children together, Joshua and Charlene had mutually agreed to separate in 2012, after which Charlene relocated to Texas with her parents. There, she married Chase Childers, who had played a role in raising Joshua's children. Unfortunately, this marriage also ended in divorce when Charlene engaged in an affair with the town's police chief, Timothy Dean. Their relationship began as a friendship during Charlene's employment at the Animal Control Department, which collaborated closely with the police department. Eventually, their bond evolved into a romantic one, leading to their marriage in March 2018. Charlene frequently shared pictures of her new family, including Tim, on her social media accounts. However, legal issues arose for Charlene and her husband in the latter part of 2018, which had repercussions on Joshua and Charlene's older children. It was at this point that the pieces of the puzzle started to come together, offering a glimmer of hope for the detectives working to solve the case. To comprehend the motive behind the shootout, it was crucial to delve into Joshua and Charlene's past. The detectives uncovered that Joshua was embroiled in an ongoing custody dispute with Charlene Childers over their 2 children at the time of his death. Charlene's recent trip to New York to retrieve her children, shortly before the shooting occurred, raised suspicions regarding her potential involvement in the double homicide. However, after thorough investigation, it was determined that Charlene could not have been the shooter, as she was confirmed to be at her workplace during the incident. When questioned about her relationship with Joshua, Charlene acknowledged past conflicts, but denied holding any intense grudges against him. She emphasized that despite their differences, she never wished harm upon him. The conversation then shifted towards Charlene's current husband, Timothy Dean, which surprised the detectives to learn that she was no longer with him and divorce proceedings had been initiated. Charlene expressed her frustration, attributing the loss of custody of her children to Tim's influence, highlighting the strain in their relationship. Further investigation revealed that Tim was residing in Texas at the time, prompting detectives to delve into the dynamics of their marriage and the underlying causes of their disputes. Charlene provided more details about the issues that led to their estrangement, shedding light on a complex web of relationship challenges and legal battles. Delving deeper into Tim's situation, detectives discovered that he had recently lost his job. When reaching out to his former colleagues, troubling details emerged. They described Tim as having a little man syndrome, indicating that he had an inflated sense of importance due to his position as chief of police. However, behind his back, people often mocked his behavior.
Don't say it.
He had a little man syndrome. He thought, and again, this is just my speculation, but he feels like, okay, I'm the chief of police of Sunrise, so you're going to respect me because of who I am. And people didn't. People laughed at him.
The reason for Tim's job loss stemmed from a disturbing incident captured in a video uploaded by Charlene on Facebook in May 2018. The video depicted Tim yelling at his 3-year-old daughter, Madison, for not eating her food.
Fuck up!
Skylar.
I'm gonna snatch you up by your goddamn hair. Eat your fucking food. I don't want to hear any huffing and puffing. I want to hear fucking yes, sir. Now eat! Grab your fork and put food in your...
Within a few days, severe consequences unfolded for Tim, including his arrest, loss of custody of his daughter, and resignation as police chief. Charlene's custody of her children was also lost, leading to the crumbling of their marriage. Eventually, the kids returned to live with their father, Joshua, in New York, leaving Charlene and Tim to face the consequences of their actions. When asked about Tim and their relationship, his ex-wife, Christina Hill, responded differently.
Tim wasn't always a monster. He wasn't always like that. He was in a very dark place. He was about to lose his house. He didn't have any money left. He was about to lose cars. He lost his kid. About to lose the love of his life.
After Tim resigned, detectives discovered that he had found a job as a driver for a local vending company. However, it was later revealed that Tim had been consistently missing shifts at his new job. Interestingly, one of the days he missed his shift coincided with the day of the shootout in Sodus. Further investigation uncovered that Tim had also been involved in a car crash in Kansas just 2 days before the murder occurred. What's intriguing is that the vehicle involved in the crash was a rental car. An officer arrived at the scene and engaged in a conversation with Tim. It became evident that Tim was providing a fabricated explanation to the police officer. He claimed that he was attempting to make a U-turn because he had run out of gas and was searching for a gas station. This led him to drive off the shoulder of the road and into a culvert, resulting in damage to the vehicle. However, one major question remains. Why was Tim in Kansas in the first place? Tim spoke to the officer, expressing distress about his personal life and mentioning the possibility of a divorce, stating that everything seemed to be falling apart. However, a significant finding in the footage raised concerns. Tim mentioned that he possessed a sidearm and a shotgun. This left the detective feeling uneasy, sensing that something was amiss. Upon further investigation at the rental agency, the officer discovered that Tim was carrying additional firearms, including an AR-15 and several handguns, along with ammunition and body armor. This discovery added another layer of complexity to the situation, raising questions about Tim's intentions and why he was armed with such an arsenal. Now, when inquired about his destination, he provided a captivating response. To confirm their suspicions, investigators scrutinized the rental agreements and detected an irregularity. The rental agreement indicated that the vehicle was leased to an individual named Braun Bolar. Upon conducting further investigation, they uncovered that Braun had a close association with Tim. It was revealed that Braun and Tim were friends who had served together during Tim's tenure as the chief of police. Intrigued by this connection, investigators decided to question Braun in order to gather more information about the circumstances surrounding the rental car and Tim's activities. Braun Bolar had an 11-year career as a Texas police officer, most recently at the Sunray Police Department. As previously mentioned, Tim and Braun were close friends, having served together during Tim's time as police chief. According to Braun's statement, Tim was unable to leave work to drive to New York, so Braun stepped in to assist. With Tim's credit cards maxed out and him falling behind, Braun agreed to rent the car under his own name. Now, during the interrogation, Braun was asked to reflect on his years in law enforcement and his relationship with Tim. He stated that initially, he didn't question Tim's request for the rental car, assuming it was for local use. It wasn't until he received a troubling call about Tim crashing the car in Kansas that he began to doubt Tim's intentions. During the interview, Braun vehemently denied having any knowledge of Tim's plans to take the car to New York. He expressed genuine sympathy for Tim's situation and trusted him enough not to question his motives. However, when asked to undergo a polygraph test, Braun's results were less than satisfactory, leading to further interrogation. In subsequent questioning, Braun disclosed shocking information. He confessed to overhearing Tim discussing plans to harm someone and revealed that Tim had rented the car under Braun's name to avoid suspicion. Braun's collaboration swiftly redirected the investigation onto a new path. After the interview, Braun was permitted to return home, but law enforcement maintained close surveillance on him. Once an arrest warrant was obtained, Braun was promptly taken into custody. Concurrently, in Dumas, Texas, law enforcement officers encircled Tim Dean's residence, fully aware of the potential threat posed by his extensive collection of firearms. Recognizing the necessity for a cautious approach, they opted for a discreet nighttime operation to apprehend him. With meticulous precision, they deployed a flashbang inside the house to disorient Tim and create an opportunity for his safe arrest. Law enforcement officers acted swiftly and efficiently, ensuring that he no longer posed a danger. Meanwhile, a DNA test was conducted, confirming that his DNA matched the DNA found on the abandoned ski mask at the crime scene. With Tim now in custody, the process of interrogation and uncovering the truth behind the tragic events in Sodus could commence. Armed with a bottle of water, detectives endeavored to untangle the complexities surrounding his connection to Joshua and Amber. Tim recounted his interactions with the couple emphasizing instances when he had been present during their custody exchanges. Tim did not appear to hold any personal animosity towards Joshua. The detectives then dropped a bombshell, presenting evidence that placed Tim in the vicinity of the crime scene at the time of the murders. They sought an explanation for his presence in New York. Tim's account was somewhat vague. Initially, he claimed to have intended to reconcile with Charlene's uncle. However, it seemed that he ended up aimlessly driving, consuming alcohol, and becoming lost in his own troubles. The detectives intensified their efforts, attempting to make Tim confront reality. They reminded him of the gravity of the situation and stressed the importance of taking responsibility for his actions. Despite their persistent urging, Tim remained steadfast in his denial of any involvement in the murders. Upon concluding the interrogation, the detectives came to the realization that their efforts were futile. Tim's unwavering denial clearly indicated that extracting a confession would be an arduous task. Nevertheless, undeterred by this setback, they remained resolute in their pursuit of uncovering the truth behind the deaths of Joshua and Amber. However, their interest extended beyond just one individual in Texas. The investigators decided to revisit Charlene, the only person they had yet to thoroughly question. Tracking her down at her ex-boyfriend's residence, the police brought her in for further inquiry. Despite not being the shooter and being elsewhere in New York at the time of the murders, there were reasons to suspect her involvement. During a previous conversation with the police, Charlene falsely claimed to have learned about Joshua's death through a Facebook post, which raised suspicions since no public post had disclosed the victims' identities. Another cause for concern was Charlene's alleged role in driving Braun, the individual whose name the rental car was registered under, to the agency just 8 days after the murders. They once again inquired about how she became aware of the killings. Charlene stuck to her fabricated Facebook story, asserting that she had received the news during a call with Joshua's mother. As the interrogation progressed, the facade of Charlene's concocted tales began to crumble. The detectives delved deeper, probing Charlene about Tim's relationship with Joshua and any potential motives he may have had to harm him. Charlene disclosed that Joshua had previously been abusive towards her, but emphasized that Tim had never spoken ill of him except for expressing a willingness to confront him if necessary. The detectives then pressed Charlene regarding her association with Braun, the friend she had driven to rent the car. Charlene evaded the questions, claiming ignorance about Braun's affairs and assuming the trip was work-related. However, as the inquiries regarding distance and fuel consumption persisted, Charlene's responses grew less assured, hinting at her mounting unease. Upon noticing this, the detectives directly confronted Charlene, inquiring about her potential role in the murders or if she had influenced the perpetrator to commit the heinous act. Charlene vehemently denied any involvement, but her demeanor betrayed her true emotions. As the pressure of the interrogation mounted, Charlene's resolve began to crumble, and under the intensified questioning, she eventually confessed to her participation in the murders. Charlene proceeded to disclose to the detectives that following the loss of custody of her children in August, she had a conversation with Tim where she expressed her frustration with Joshua. She recounted how she vented her feelings to Tim, who seemingly shared her sentiments and expressed his own frustrations. Driven by her desperation to regain a sense of normalcy, where she could have her children during the school year, while Joshua had them for the summer and holidays, Charlene engaged in discussions with Tim about drastic measures. However, she claimed to have limited knowledge about the specifics of the firearm, except that it belonged to the Center Police Department. In the lead-up to the murders, Tim, Charlene, and Braun held meetings in Tim's garage, where they meticulously devised their plan to eliminate Joshua. Charlene's role involved dropping off Braun at the rental agency, who would then proceed to drive the rental car to Tim. Tim would subsequently embark on the journey to New York to carry out the murder. According to Charlene's account, the plan was straightforward: eliminate Joshua. However, she maintained that Amber was never intended to be part of the plan. When Tim crashed the rental car, Charlene drove to meet him at the motel and subsequently dropped him off at the airport to acquire a new rental car, with the intention of resuming their plan on November 5, 2018. This chilling revelation provided the detectives with a clearer understanding of the premeditated nature of the crime and the extent of Charlene's involvement in orchestrating it. Another distressing fact that exacerbated the pain for the loved ones of the victims was that Charlene had actually visited them during the funeral and deceitfully pretended to grieve. Charlene and Tim were charged in connection with the murders of Josh and Amber on November 5, 2018. Wayne County Sheriff Barry Vert suggested that the double homicide was a result of a child custody battle, with Timothy being the one who pulled the trigger. Timothy faced charges of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. Despite being in Texas at the time, he was expected to be extradited to face the charges. Charlene, on the other hand, was charged with conspiracy and other offenses and was being held in the Wayne County Jail. Charlene pleaded guilty on June 27, 2019, and testified against Timothy as part of a deal with the prosecutor. She disclosed that the plan involved stealing a gun from the Sunray Police Department in Texas, where Timothy had previously served as police chief. Prosecutors claimed that Timothy then traveled back to New York State to carry out the murders. When questioned about Joshua's death and the custody battle, Charlene confessed, "I got what I wanted." Timothy Dean was found guilty of 2 counts of murder by a jury and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in August 2019. The judge informed Timothy that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, highlighting his lack of emotion or remorse during the trial and labeling him as a classic psychopath. During the court proceedings, Braun Bolar, the former police officer who assisted Dean in renting a car for the crime, faced emotional statements from the families of the victims. They expressed their grief over the loss of their loved ones and the devastating impact on their lives. Braun pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and served 1 year and 4 months in prison before being released. Meanwhile, Charlene was sentenced to 28 years in prison for her involvement in the murders. The judge described it as one of the most senseless and tragic cases he had ever presided over. The families of the victims were left to grapple with the profound loss caused by the senseless violence orchestrated by those they once trusted. The whole incident turned so many people's lives upside down. It was especially devastating for the kids. Gabby, the older of Joshua and Charlene's 2 children, was really hurt and confused. Joshua's sister, Nicole, had to step in and take care of Joshua's older kids after he passed away. She already had 4 kids of her own, and it was tough. So she asked for help through a GoFundMe page to raise some money, but they didn't get much. Joshua's younger brother now lives in their family home with his girlfriend. They're taking care of Joshua's 2 dogs and planting flowers in memory of them. They're trying to keep his spirit alive in their hearts. While nothing can bring Joshua and Amber back, their families take solace in knowing that the people responsible for taking their loved ones' lives are paying the price in prison.